Revenge of the Druid Queen. Chapter 1.
How many drunken idiots does it take to start a tavern fight?
Mel looked over her shoulder, wiping the remnants of ale from an earthenware mug. She shrugged.
I don't know. How many?
Usually just one.
Bedelia kicked the kitchen door open, a slew of crashing and cursing floating in from the sneezing dragon's main room.
Angus!
She called, walking into the chaos. Mel snorted, drying her hands and following Bedelia. Across the tavern's modest but crowded hall, she spotted the pair of problem customers, surrounded by other patrons who dodged swinging fists while cheering and trying not to spill their ale. Angus, the burly bartender, moved from behind the bar.
Got it,
he grunted.
Another round?
Mel asked tiredly, slipping behind the counter and taking a gruff fisherman's empty cup. A half-missing smile cracked his face and he nodded enthusiastically. She filled his drink from the barrel and watched the man. He looked her up and down, as most new faces around the sneezing dragon did. Though nothing in Slatport was ever really new, it was a spinning watermill of ale, fistfights and sailors. Across the room a voice bellowed,
out!
The booming order shuddered through the room, sending a rowdy man running for the door.
Speaking of,
Mel thought with equal parts amusement and irritation. The second man in the fight, however, sat back down, taking a swig of his ale. The barkeep grabbed the man by the vest, mug shattering as he dragged him out of the tavern and tossed him into the mud.
Thank you, Angus,
Mel said as he took her place behind the bar. He grunted, filling another drink. With a satirical smile, she wiped the bar top.
That's what I love about you, Angus. Always such eloquence. You do your giant ancestors proud.
He sneered, but the corner of his mouth flicked up in an almost smile. Though burly and oft silent, if Angus was descended from giants, he'd be at least 7 hands taller.
Thank the gods he's not,
she thought.
We've enough cranky, overgrown mountains clomping about the place already.
Oh, don't tease him,
Bedelia chided, setting her tray on the bar.
4 ales, please. And if there were a giant in Slatport, no one would be in here drinking this muck. No offence,
she added. A round of cheering rose from the back of the tavern, where a small group played cards. One was a Slatport resident, and 2 were bounty hunters who passed through once or twice per year. Mel didn't recognise the other pair, a younger man and woman, but the man's raucous laughter carried across the room. Angus grunted, putting full cups on the tray. He sniffed the air.
Smells like trouble tonight.
Aye,
Bedelia agreed, her dark curls bouncing.
Second shouting match in 2 hours. Something strange in the air, I suppose. And a full moon's no help. Always brings out the rabble. Reminds me of the night we found you, really. Though no one bothered to drink. Only came here to gossip about the mysterious sea wench.
Mel grumbled.
Don't start that again. I much prefer barmaid.
Well, barmaid, my tables need me and they'll be wanting stew.
She thanked Angus and whisked the tray off the counter. Mel picked up a broom, gesturing to the broken shards.
It's just maid for the moment,
she said under her breath. It was true that most things in Slatport were constantly moving, but rarely changing. But not always. 6 years ago, Mel herself was one such shiny nugget of gossip for the locals to cluck over. A storm had raged for days in Slatport, one that kept even the most ambitious fishing crews indoors. Days later, the skies eventually cleared, and debris from the storm washed ashore. Along with miscellaneous bits of driftwood and shutters ripped off windows by the wind, came Mel. Though she had no memory of that day, Bedelia told the story often.
You were a shivering lump of ragged clothes, tossed up by the surf. You're lucky as a gnome my brother lost his nets in the storm, or no one would have found you before you caught the shivers and died.
After sleeping through a week, she'd sat straight up, ratty brown hair clinging to her fever-drenched face.
Are you all right, child?
Bedelia's mother had asked.
What's your name?
Mel, she'd responded. Her name was Mel, and that was all she remembered. No one knew where she came from. Her ship was never found, and Mel was thought to be the only survivor. She finished sweeping up the broken mug and pulled herself away from the memory.
No need to dwell on the past,
she told herself. It was a busy night at the Sneezing Dragon, as the end of a week tended to be, but the drizzling weather pushed more customers than usual through the door. With them came noise and calls for stew as stomachs rumbled.
Mel!
Bedelia called from a few tables away, voice barely rising over the din. She held up 5 fingers and shouted,
"Stew!"
Bobbing her head in acknowledgement. She took a tray of empty dishes back to the kitchen and disposed of the broken shards cupped in her apron. She sighed at the stew bubbling over a low fire, knowing its contents. Though it smelled fine now, when Angus had been preparing it, he'd asked for her to bring the supposedly almost bad meat from the larder. That was enough to disinterest her stomach. Knowing it'd be a long night of hauling food and drink, she snatched a roll for herself and dug into it, leaning against a barrel. Splinters from the rough wood stuck to her skirt, but she didn't mind, since it was already stained with ale and mud from the heavy rains of late summer. She'd been a frail, scared thing, the teenaged girl who'd washed up on Slatport's shore on a rainy day 6 years ago. With nothing but rags, a first name, and a simple pendant she'd never removed. Bedelia's mother had graciously taken the girl in, so long as she worked her share. Within a few days of waking, Mel had met nearly everyone in the village. Everyone was eager to meet the girl from the sea. They guessed her to be 17 or 18 years. She chose 18, if only to have one thing under her very own control. They all had something to say about her, and they were all sure their guess was right. Some said she must be from the south, because of her slight build and sharp tongue. Others said she came from the east, from the homelands of giants and Nock. Tall for a girl, but not remotely tall enough to have giant's blood. She had a strange stare, but her eyes were human-sized and dark brown, not swirling with bright blue or green like a Nock's. Upon realizing her body itself could hold clues about her past, she'd taken to studying every detail. Her hands were soft, as if she hadn't worked a trade or managed a house, but her arms told a story she'd never been able to unravel. On the back of her forearms, dozens of narrow white scars stretched from elbow to wrist. Sometimes she wondered if it was a scar at all, or just a strange marking on the skin, for it was mostly flat. Had it come from farm work or an accident? Yet they were so precise, she couldn't tell. White, long-sleeved shifts were worn by all, so covering them was no challenge. She wasn't ashamed of them, but whenever a stranger caught a glimpse, it often led to more questions she didn't have answers to. Ultimately, she'd decided what they all had. She was nothing special, but a normal girl wrapped in unusual circumstances. She fished the necklace out of her bodice and ran a thumb over the strange pendant. Even now the leather cord hung around her neck, aged and stained with constant wear. The shape and size of a coin, made of silvery metal, with a symbol that she never understood. A single line woven into an endless pattern, complex yet perfectly symmetrical. The kitchen door banged open, and she stuffed it back into her clothes. Bedelia hovered in the doorway, discarding a full tray.
If my boys have taught me anything, it's that a good meal can stop a fight before it begins.
She glanced back at the rowdy tavern.
Bring out the food, would you?
Though she'd never shown it to anyone, Mel once drew the symbol, but no one recognised it, and more than once it was compared to a child's scribbles in the dirt. She chuckled and hopped off the barrel.
"Lots of stew. Coming up."
Ever so rarely, there was a flicker of that frail, scared girl, a jolt of fear, when a particularly angry customer raved at her, or even rarer, a swell of hope when she thought something seemed familiar. Mel did her best to keep that girl hidden away. She ladled up a tray full of 5 bowls and plunked a roll into each one, eyeing the stew skeptically. Behind the bar, she asked,
"Are you sure this is all right to serve?"
Almost bad is not bad.
Angus shrugged.
It's still good.
Her eyes narrowed.
"Meat is either good or it's gone bad, Angus. So is it good or has it gone off?"
He paused a moment in thought, then made a gesture that didn't encourage her.
It's in between. Go serve the customers.
He waved her off like a buzzing fly. Mel huffed but did as she was told.
"In between?"
She thought with disdain. Calls for food came from nearly every table, so she hurried to the nearest one. 5 greasy fists reached toward her, and she accepted 3 copper coins from each patron in turn before handing over the first bowl.
Don't spill today,
Bedelia teased, passing by with another tray.
This girl gets lost in her mind too often,
She told her customers in good humour.
Pray your shoes leave half as dry as they came in.
Mel sliced a fiery glare at the barmaid but grinned, hand ready to pick up another bowl.
"Gods hear me,"
she said, holding back a giggle.
Allow me protection from even the most dangerous of enemies, especially clumsiness and spilled stews.
Miss?
One of the customers at her table got her attention.
You forgot my bread.
Her cheeks flushed, suddenly feeling a rush of hot embarrassment through her body.
My apologies. I'll bring one right away.
She handed out the next 3 bowls, but turned back to an empty tray.
Huh.
She paused, squinting in confusion.
I could have sworn there were 5.
She thought.
I'm short a bowl and a brain today, apparently,
she told the customers, excusing herself. Once secluded behind the kitchen door, she breathed deeply, pouring herself a swig of what Angus called belly burner. It was still 4 hours until they closed up, and it felt like there was a long night ahead. Mel wiped her face and carried on, gathering more steaming bowls and extra bread. As she emerged from the kitchen, the shouting began.